Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video we're going to be discussing as well as analysing tech news which as usual has popped up the past 24 or so hours. Hopefully you are having an amazing day. This video is going to be in a slightly different format to normal because we actually have some updated information for Zen 3 and Zen 4. So we're going to have a mini analysis in this video and also kind of some more regular news as well. A number of you have actually been emailing and asking me if I had any updated information for Zen 3 and Zen 4. So the timing's actually really good because Jim over at Adore TV actually uploaded a video with some new information for Zen 3. And the reason that this is so interesting to me is it seems to back up a lot of my previous info that was released late last year. So what I want to do is take a couple of points from Jim's video and then kind of marry it in with what I was told, and then hopefully we can get a better picture of Zen 3 and maybe also AMD's longer term goals with Zen 4. I would of course encourage you to check out Jim's video. I will once again have it linked in the video description. I'd also like to thank everyone who actually emailed me that Jim actually uploaded this video. But yeah, anyway, let's get into this. So according to him, we're looking at a 10 to 15% single-threaded IPC gain over Zen 2. And this is raising some eyebrows because Forrest Norrod from AMD seemed to imply that we could be looking at a pretty significant jump in IPC for Zen 3. After all, he essentially said that they don't want to do just small iterative architectures, that Zen 3 is an entirely new core and it, will be able to get out of your PC and make you pancakes in the morning. It was very capable. And last year, as I mentioned, I received several let's say sources providing me some insight into Zen 3. One of the things I was told is that IPC gains for integer performance was around 10 to 12%, 50% for floating point performance, and then average IPC was 17%. The 17% IPC though was told to me by one person, and then someone else said that could potentially be true, but they expect that to more be like data center loads, and they were a little bit hesitant, and they said I would probably taper your expectations a little bit for gaming. And they also said that for the gaming workloads, the other thing to take into consideration is also the fact that Intel, with their Ring bus, does generally do pretty well with gaming, and obviously if workloads start to spill over from one chip to another, then there could be some latency issues with the Infinity Fabric of AMD processors. So they still felt that on average Intel would probably be very competitive in gaming, but in terms of server workloads AMD would be pretty damn good. I'm not really certain about the 50% floating point performance. I was actually getting a little more skeptical with it, but the more that I'm kind of looking at how AMD are being very boastful with Zen 3 and seem to be putting so much effort into the data center, perhaps this would make sense. I was also told though that the CPU still only supports AVX 256 instructions, not 512, and my information also that was provided was that it's SMT2 and the TDP is identical to what we have with current generation products. From an oopsie from AMD, they basically uploaded a video to YouTube which should have been unlisted, and they kind of provided a very rudimentary block diagram of what a chiplet/CCX looks like for Zen 2 and also for Zen 3, and you can see yourself that it does look rather unified. Essentially it kind of looks like the cache themselves are unified, the level 3 cache between the two CCXs, and almost like the CCX is now one big thing. So rather than two 4-core CCXs, it's basically one 8-core CCX, which is essentially the chiplet. Jim's information also seems to tally up with this, and my information seems to tally up with this, so quite frankly at this point I think that's a certainty. He also said that there was a increased boost frequency, but he didn't have any information as to what that was. I was told with clock speeds it's 50 to 100 megahertz for Ryzen, but Epic could be a little bit higher. But what I was also told is that it could potentially be higher sustained boost clocks when more cores are under load. Unfortunately, that's a very broad statement, And the issue, of course, when dealing with sources is that sometimes they don't want to clarify a point, because obviously one source might have one piece of information, another source might have another piece of information, but companies can be very selective with who gets what, especially if it's very precise. So you can sometimes ask a person X, Y, and Z, and they're very, very happy to tell you, but that you can then ask them Z, and it sounds like it's not a bigger deal than what the other stuff you've asked them, but they're like, no, sorry, not enough people know about that yet, so I'm not really able to give you clarification. So all I can tell you there is that the boost clocks are possibly going to be better when more cores are under load. Not that Zen 2 is awful by any stretch of the imagination. Jim also stated that Milan A0 Silicon is sampling, but said right now that SMT is broken with this early engineering silicon. So this is probably good news. It means we're going to get some rudimentary benchmarks most likely start popping up at some point or another. But according to him, we could actually see some delays, because originally the B0 silicon had intended to start coming out earlier, and then we could see the chips launch in like October. In fact, the October release date has been very important over the past couple of months. As just yesterday I covered a news story from 0x22h on Twitter that AMD were delaying the release time of its GPUs and CPUs, with the original intended release date being October the 7th. The really funny thing is, though, that the release date seems to be the thing that is the most up in the air. As back late last year I was told that the release date was Q4, and then someone told me for the Nave cards, the big ones, you know, the RDNA 2 based GPUs, it would be at some point summer, and then it looked like it was going to be pretty much locked in for that, as that source had been really good in the past. They actually even gave me the Radeon 7 renders back in the day, so that's a pretty damn good source. And then someone else said that no, the cards had been delayed, so the release date seems to be very up in the air, and I wonder if it does keep getting delayed, if AMD may choose to just say screw it and wait until next year, because it's not like Ryzen 3000 is selling poorly, and obviously the Threadripper processors, the third generation, is kind of newer as well, and AMD just doesn't really have any competition yet. You can argue that Comet Lake is going to be pretty damn good for certain workloads. Some people don't care about the power requirements, because obviously everyone's usage scenarios are different, and technically speaking I think gaming, Intel's probably still going to win with the 10 processor cores, but right now AMD CPUs are selling incredibly well, so you can argue that maybe delaying the release of the CPUs is not such a big deal. But then again, Lisa Su has gone on record and said that they want to release both the CPUs and GPUs this year. So yeah. Switching gears though to Zen 4, it is a 5nm derivative of Zen 3, which does have an improved IPC, but he doesn't have information exactly how much of an increase in IPC that it is. I was told that it's going to be on the AM5 platform, and from my information, it was going to be DDR5, and that seems to be backed up with what Jim's saying. He said that yes, it's DDR5, and I think that one of the key reasons here is simply memory bandwidth. It's not just like, oh, it's a PR marketing move, because I was told that while Zen 3's core count is not increasing, this is for a couple of reasons. One, AMD doesn't feel like it's needed, because obviously they've got up to 16 cores. Secondly, they don't really have the memory bandwidth to do it, because obviously you need to feed the cores with data. And yes, Zen 3 does have a more robust caching system, including the fact that, from what I'm told, level 1 cache is about 40% greater in bandwidth. I don't know if the caches themselves are bigger, but obviously you still need to get the data from somewhere. So I think that the desktop to move to DDR5 is going to be very important. And second point for that is on the data center side of the equation. We've seen some pretty damn major moves from AMD in the data center. Obviously their processors are doing extremely well, but their GPUs, they're of course releasing GPUs which are specifically designed for the data center, CDNA, and all of those can basically operate together in essentially a massive infinity fabric network. which means GPUs can share memory from one another, but they can also share main system memory. So it makes logical sense that you would want a really large pool of main system memory, which also has tons of memory bandwidth. And one of the ways you can achieve both, of course, is shifting to DDR5, as obviously RAM capacities can increase that way, plus not to mention the fact that the RAM runs faster. I'm half expecting, to be honest, just with what's going on in the world right now, for release dates to be in fluctuation quite frequently. And obviously there have been a number of events which have been postponed in tech as well. So I'm pretty happy, to be honest with you, with what I'm learning about Zen 3. Jim did go into some other details, but out of respect for him, obviously I don't want to go into the whole thing. So once again, I'd encourage you to check out his video. But I'm very happy that what he's saying seems to back up what I'm saying, and also some of the other information he's got is pretty cool as well. Anyway, moving on to Intel, because there have been a couple of very interesting things that have happened in the world of Intel in the last few days, and one of which is an engineering sample processor which was discovered by Rogaine. And this is a Tiger Lake processor, which of course is designed for mobile. Unfortunately, we don't have the power envelope of the processor officially disclosed, but it looks like it's a 15 to 25 watt part, although it is only 4 cores, 8 threads, so obviously that means hyper-threading is enabled. Rogaine has also compared this against a Ryzen 7 4800U, and well, you can see yourself the difference, with the 4800U easily beating it, although do bear in mind that it does have double the number of cores / threads. And it's a bizarro world thing, because AMD's processor, or APU technically, is losing in terms of graphics, but it's beating it in CPU world. I feel the whole, like, it just feels like dogs and cats are going to live together, and like the universe is just turning upside down. Like, what is going on? It's confusing and frightening. Help me. But on a serious note, given this is an engineering sample, the fact that it's even hitting 3 GHz, assuming this is like sustained clocks, is pretty damn impressive. Quite frankly, Tiger Lake is looking to be a really nice feather in the cap for Intel. And there's actually a couple of different Tiger Lake benchmarks. So one here you can see which is being compared against the 4800U. And we also have another one which the reported stock clock is 3000 MHz, and once again 4 cores, 8 threads. So it's going to be very interesting to see what goes on in terms of the ultra lightweight portables, but this also bodes extremely well for desktop processors in the future. It also looks like Intel are going to use 11 for its generational numbering scheme, which kind of makes sense. After all, Intel have got like Gen 9, Gen 10, so Gen 11 going to Gen 20 I don't think kind of makes so much sense. As a quick reminder, Intel's Skylake is the current architecture for desktop, but since then we've got Sunny Cove, which is released, Willow Cove, which is of course Tiger Lake, which had some cache redesign things, and there's been some new optimizations on the chip. But really, to me, the chip that I'm most interested in with Intel is actually Golden Cove, which is said to increase single-thread performance, AI, and also has new security features and so on. I've actually gone much deeper into Intel's competitive side from the desktop before in a separate video, so if you so desire, you can check that out. And, well, we've talked about AMD, we've talked about Intel, might as well mention the fact that Nvidia have now formally announced RTX Super laptops. And this is actually something that popped up yesterday, but quite frankly, I just had such a long video yesterday, I didn't really feel that I had a ton of time to discuss it. But, as you can imagine, what we have with the RTX Super series is much like the desktop, increased specifications over the original design. The laptops are actually due to start shipping from mid this month, 15th of April, but obviously new designs will continue to come out over the next month or two. And the usual suspects are creating laptops with these inside, including HP, Gigabyte, Dell, Acer, MSI, Lenovo, yada yada yada. There are some pretty interesting things here though, including Dynamic Boost, which actually seems a little bit like what we have with AMD and their Smart Shift technology. Dynamic Boost basically balances the power consumption between the CPU and GPU. And apparently it's adaptive and, quote, enabled at all times. And the card itself also offers Advanced Optimus. This basically switches between discrete GPU and the integrated iGPU of the CPU. So obviously if you're just on the desktop and you're not really needing to do anything strenuous, then the discrete GPU could just be idle. Nvidia also pushing low power GDDR6 as well in an effort, of course, to conserve energy which is used. Honestly, this is pretty much what you would kind of expect with an iteration such as Super. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It pretty much lives up to all of my expectation. But ultimately, it's obviously not like a new architecture, and I think most of us at this point kind of knew what we were going to be getting with RTX Super. But still, if you are in the mood for a gaming laptop, then clearly, for now anyway, this will represent the highest ends that you can get with the RTX 2080 Super. And the final piece of news for today actually concerns some really bad news for the PlayStation 4, and that is that Last of Us Part 2 is being delayed. This was actually announced from Sony's own Twitter accounts, including, of course, the official game's Twitter account. And they've said essentially it's an indefinite delay, and citing, you know what, I can't say the word because YouTube. And the delay is indefinite, so obviously that doesn't mean the game's never going to release. Instead, they just don't want to put a release date on it. And interestingly, Jason Schreier over at Kotaku has said that the game is pretty much done at this point. It's not like they couldn't have necessarily made the release date. Instead, this is potentially more of a logistical issue. Like getting games into the shops, and will people be able to cough up and actually buy the game, and if they did release it, would it impact sales figures, and so on and so on. So allegedly that's one of the reasons that it's been delayed, but obviously Sony themselves are not stating that. They've just said it's because of the current global conditions. Frankly, I'm actually really disappointed about this. I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I haven't really played my PlayStation 4 that much recently. I've even recently only started to play through God of War. And this year, Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil 3, and Last of Us 2, plus some other games were really on my wish list. And I actually just purchased Resident Evil 3. I was offered a review code for it, but I decided to not do it because I'm so busy at the moment. I don't really have enough time to really put into doing like a performance analysis, to be honest. So I was like, you know what? No, I'm just going to buy the game and not tie myself into any commitments there. But I've been really looking forward to Resident Evil 3, although I heard it's not as long. So I've been really looking forward to just like delving into Last of Us Part 2, but I can kind of understand why it's happening. At this point, I am getting a little nervous with the releases of both consoles. I guess it's really going to depend on what's happening over the next several months, and I think that's really going to be what we keep saying throughout this year. I think a lot of stuff is going to be up in the air this year, which sucks. But anyway, hopefully you have enjoyed the video. Normal stuff if you did. Like, share, comment and subscribe. And I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.